11Tenths Racecraft.
Here we are again, Season 2, Episode 7. Thanks for joining us again. Don't forget, we are on Spotify now and doing all the podcast things. If you don't want to look at our ugly mugs, you can just listen to our ugly voices.
Yeah.
All right, so usually Randy and I are doing things together and talking about those kind of trips, but this was a weekend where we were thousands of kilometers apart.
Yeah. We went our separate ways, yeah.
Exactly. So, what did you do this weekend?
So myself and a friend...
You guys know Brad.
Yeah, Brad at West Beach. We went down to the U.S. for the second time to a drag race event called No Prep Kings. It's based off of the Discovery Channel Street Outlaws show. And they have this series called No Prep, meaning they don't prep the track. There's no glue put down. That they try and have a virgin drag strip. Obviously there's rubber from doing a burnout, a water burnout, but there's no glue allowed. And it's a bit safer than racing on the street, just because they're
mimicking the street with that no glue thing, right?
Yeah, so, exactly. Yeah. But they're able to put down way more power. Typically they're running on the street. They're doing about 3.8 seconds to the 8th mile. So these guys all run 8th mile, not a quarter mile. And here on the track they're doing about 3.5, and they're able to turn up the power a bit more. They are running big tire. They have street cars.
Yeah.
So I mean, these are steel roof cars with the original A, B, and C pillars. But the whole front half is basically tube. The rear half is tube with tubbed out with massive tires.
Are they using beadlock rims, like they're proper?
Yeah. They do. I mean, these are massive tires, and 18-inch wide tires.
Holy smokes!
And typically, so there's generally 3 different type of power adders that these cars are, and they're all running around 3,000 to 6,000 horsepower. So all the engines are billet, so they're very strong motors. So some of them run nitrous, others run twin turbos or single turbo. And then the new power adder that everyone's jumping on the new bandwagon is what they call a ProCharger. So it's basically a centrifugal supercharger on the front. Now what they do is they're limiting. They have weight restrictions. So if you're going to run nitrous, you can actually run a lighter setup. So these nitrous cars are about 2,400 pounds, and they're running 6 kits. So when people say, when the layman buy a nitrous kit, they're like, what's the shot? 80 shot, 100 shot, 150 shot. So we're running 1 kit with 150 shot. Typically the kits max out at 250 horsepower. So these guys are running 6 250 horsepower kits. And in 3.5 seconds, all 6 kits go off, and they're all sequential.
Okay, so, one after another.
Yeah, one after another. So every 3/4 of a second, another kit fires. And and that's where, I mean, it's
small.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine the amount of few and nitrous going into these engines?
I was thinking, so it's somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 horsepower worth of nitrous, which means these engines are, first of all, taking that, but they're about 1,500 to 2,000 horsepower on their own.
Yes, so the nitrous motors specifically are very large. So they're about 960 cubic inch, almost 1,000 cubic inch. That's 8-9 liters of. These are absolutely enormous engines. And if you think about it, I mean, the pistons are like this. And and they're running to 8,000-9,000 RPM. And
question, you may or may not know the answer to this. I know I'm not huge on drag racing experience or knowledge, but I understand with the really big pro funny cars and drags, they basically rebuild the motors after every run pretty much. Is that the same thing they're doing here?
No.
See, that I respect that more.
Yeah, these motors last. I mean, sometimes they'll last an entire season.
That's epic.
Yeah. So the more successful teams will have 1 or 2 spare motors in their trailer.
Yeah.
But these motors are $125,000 each, and they're full billet. So they are completely custom made motors. And the motors are designed for the power adder that's being used. So there's a specific motor design for the nitrous. And then the twin turbos generally like the hemispherical design of a Hemi.
I was just going to ask, if Hemis or LS.
Right. So the twin turbo ones have a Hemi architecture, and they're smaller displacement. So and you run bigger turbos now. turbo cars, from what I understand, are a little bit harder to tune because there is a lot more variables. Now, the variables meaning the elevation, the barometric pressure, the temperature, midday temperature versus that in the evening, right? You're going to get more boost in the evening because of, and then it's just harder to really, to really tune. And we're talking like the tuning is so intricate. These guys are, they're within a fender or a bumper at the end of the 660 feet, 3.4 seconds, like literally 100th of a second is, a win or lose. So tuning is extremely important. A lot of these turbo guys are actually going to ProCharger because a ProCharger is much. It's basically runs off the crankshaft. The boost is always going to be the same. And it's a lot easier to tune.
That makes sense.
Right. So
if you want to look at what a ProCharger looks like, I'll obviously throw it up on the video, but have a listen and look at when we went to the PRI show. You'll see a lot of them. They're like, huge.
They're bigger than your head.
And it's impressive to see. There were some billet motors we looked at too, some really impressive stuff. So if you want to see that, I would say go back and check out that episode if you haven't already, because there were some crazy builds there. But that's like one-off stuff, right?
So the ProCharge cards actually, their limit is 2,800 pounds. There's about 300 pounds. They have to have about a 300-pound ballast, or they have to weigh 300 pounds more than a nitrous car. So
that explains why the ProChargers can be so darn big and huge, because those got to be heavy on their own. But okay, interesting. I would imagine too. You think about that. It's linear progression versus a turbo just comes on, and here you go to boost. Unless you have sequential turbos. So it's
the nice thing about the turbos. According to them, I was talking to some of the drivers. What they have is a scramble button, so it's basically like an overboost button. So if they're going down the track and they notice that the other guy is just edging them out, they can push a button and they get like an extra 10 pounds of boost or 8 pounds of boost, and sometimes it'll actually
How bad do you want a win button?
That's basically it, right? So with a ProCharger, you don't really have that luxury because again, it's based off the crank speed. With the nitrous cars, they also have that luxury because sometimes they'll just run a 5 kit and they would leave that last kit just for the last for basically a little squirt in case.
Crazy. But 60 foot is basically your reaction time. And your launch, and that's kind of what sets up the whole run, basically.
A lot of times it is just the reaction time, and what they do is they use a trans brake, so it's just a button on the steering wheel. It's a lot quicker to release a button on the steering wheel than to actually move your foot down, right? So what they do is they come to the line and they basically get on what they call a two-step. So you basically there's like a limiter, you floor the gas and the limiter comes on, and then the turbo cars were able to build boost, and basically the transmission is holding the car back. It's like a trans brake is what they call it. And then as soon as you release a button, it just engages and boom, they're off, right? So it's a lot easier. And then on this no prep stuff, they basically run a tree, so you can see them pre-stage and then stage, and then I think they run a pro tree, so it basically just drops down and within half a second they're off. Whereas like on the street, they're either flashlight or they're hand drop, and then there's there's a whole bunch of other.
I've never done I've done hand drop. I've never done flashlight. What is it? Flashlight is as soon as you don't see the beam, you start to. How does that, or is it the same thing? It's just at the drop.
No, flashlight is basically they click the light on. They click the light on and then you go. But generally on the street, there's a lot of there's these other, I guess what they call games, because they have this chase as a race. So some of the guys will run, they'll leave right before the flashlight comes on. But if the second car goes, then it's a legit race. But if the second car will sit and the first car goes before the light, he's disqualified. But you got 0.3 of a second to make a decision. So a lot of times it's you're guessing whether he's going to jump or not, right?
That's true.
And you base it on his past experience. So some drivers will, they'll take note of that driver B has jumped, 8 out of 10 times. So there's a good likelihood of him jumping, right? So
you would want to sit.
You might want to sit, right?
Okay.
Anyways, there's this whole thing. If any of this interests you, Discovery Channel, or just look on YouTube. Lately a lot of these things have been up on YouTube. Probably not legal because Discovery, some of the things have been taken down and then they put back up. or
was it No Prep Kings, right?
Yeah, it's basically Street Outlaws. So there's basically, you can watch the racing on the street, and then the No Prep Kings is like an offshoot of the same drivers, same cars. They just run at a track instead of a street.
Now we've been at a couple of drag tracks that just happen to be around other tracks, Grand Bend, Cayuga. Have you been to St. Thomas?
Yeah.
I have not been to St. Thomas. So where did you guys go? What city was it in?
So this past weekend we went to Columbus, Ohio. It's called National Trail Raceway. That's what it's called.
Okay.
It was really odd.
How does that
name. compare
to our stuff here? Is it dead on the same? Like bigger?
Yeah, I would say it's a bigger.
The tracks are all the same. It's the the grandstands and quality, because around here, I hate to say it, everything just seems to be very run down.
It's pretty grassroots here.
Yeah.
Over there, it's NHRA level. The run out is much further. The tower is enormous. It just seems like there's more money being thrown around in the U.S. So everything is just more excess in every way. Now this one was probably closer to what we're used to here in Canada.
What was the other one?
But the one I went to a few weeks ago was called Maple Grove Raceway in Pennsylvania, which is down by Pittsburgh, I believe.
Okay.
And that was like a proper NHRA track. It's like, you can tell. Yeah.
So was it part of another event? Like, did they just have those guys, or it was their own event?
Yeah.
Because occasionally what you'll see is you'll see events where they're running NHRA and it's just that, or they'll have another show.
So we spent majority of the day in the bleachers, roasting. It was pretty warm actually. And you start talking to the people around you, and the guy right beside me was a wealth of knowledge, and he was telling us how a lot of the NHRA fans are actually leaving NHRA and going to this kind of stuff.
Interesting.
Because there's more variables, and you get to really know. You get to go down off the bleachers, go into the pits, and actually talk to some of these drivers one-on-one. Yes, they have sponsors, but
it's still more average person.
They're more average person, exactly. Yeah. And you can kind of see yourself possibly being there, as opposed to having a top fuel dragster like
hundreds of thousands. There's a difference. There's a difference between spending $120,000 on one or two motors. That's still a lot of money. I can't do that.
Yeah.
But it's different than a funny car team that's doing multiple hundreds of thousands, like millions, right? Yeah. So it's that level.
And apparently there's a lot of politics. I didn't get the gist of it, but that's what they're complaining about is the politics in the NHRA themselves. I don't know anything about it. You probably have to just
But that's like any racing. Like it's I've been through watching more than I've participated. I've been watching many different people race in Cask, in OTA, Lucky Dog, all sorts of different, and I've seen Formula One, I've seen CASCAR when that was still kicking around, and I've seen all sorts of races, dirt tracking, everything, and it's the lower level stuff that you can get in there and everyone's happy to talk to you about it, and it is that much more in reach. Some of my favorite memories are still, I would take my nephew, he was around 10 years old, we would go to certain races, and specifically the American Le Mans racing at Mosport. And all the teams, they have like hundreds of thousands of dollars of cars and prototypes and stuff. And they're like, sure, go take a seat in the driver's seat, go for it. I have a picture of him sitting on the front of the car.
That's awesome.
And it's because they are more welcoming, and they want more people to join in.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, you have the ability here in Canada, we go to the event, and there are quite a few people that go to Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, but in the US, okay, let's be honest, everybody that goes to Mosport are generally, like 90% of them live in the GTA.
Yeah.
You'll get the odd person that comes from like Montreal or Ottawa or whatever. Yeah. In the US, everyone's coming from all these neighboring states.
That's cool.
It is packed. Yeah. It is packed. There must have been 60,000 people there this weekend. We were walking through and trying to find two seats on bleachers. There's bleachers lining both sides of the track. And we actually had to go all the way to the finish line, which we're actually happy about.
Now, I can't say I've ever sat in the finish line.
Yeah, well, it's only 600 feet, so you can actually see the whole run.
Okay.
But by the finish line, you can really see who's edging out what. Or a lot of times these guys are going squirrely because to put 4,000 horsepower down, you're literally you're laying rubber the whole way down. You're just kind of spinning pretty much the whole way.
Yeah.
And you're just managing the power. So it was actually pretty exciting being at the finish line. Whereas in Pennsylvania, we're at the start line.
Yeah.
But Yeah, I was just going to say there's a lot more people down there, right? So there were actually, they had a lot more barricades, and for you to get closer to the drivers, you had to go through like just reams of people.
Okay.
Like the crowds were 5 deep to kind of get.
Because there's so much more people.
Yeah, there's so much more people. So your experience here at Mosport to do that, it's
different.
We take that for granted, right? Just because there's a lack of people we have here.
So that's the thing. Take advantage of that. Mm-hmm. So he's just said it, and I agree. I don't think enough people realize that you can do that at Mosport and other tracks as well. But for some pretty significant events, every time a driver, I don't know if they're fluffing or not. They have no reason to, but whenever I watch a series and they talk about Mosport, everyone loves coming to Mosport. Yeah. So anyway, take it as a completely different aside.
I remember a few years ago, I was just kind of walking through the pits there, and we ran into Steve Dinan.
So walking through the pits, it's different. Randy was like, let's go, time to get moving, right? Yeah. And Brad and I were actually walking around the pits, and it was Steve Dinan's Audi team.
Yeah, actually. At R8.
Yeah, his R8, and it was the first year running the latest body style. And we're like, holy smokes! We're talking to the guy. I think he was just shaving tires, and we're like, holy smokes! Is this Steve Dinan here? And he's like, yeah, he's over there. He'd love to talk to you. And we're like, we didn't even. We're like, just is he here? And then Randy pulls up because he was actually coming to grab us or say goodbye. We're like, Randy, come on, park the car. And we chatted with Steve. For quite a while, like picking his brain, and we talked about him selling the old Dinan stuff. If you didn't know that, it's not his anymore.
He actually told us that he's opening up Carbon. This is years ago. This is what, like 6 years ago?
He's making like the press rounds with the M8 now. Like you can see that M8 everywhere.
Yeah, they just had a video come up.
But he was at the beginning of Carbon when we talked to him, and it was really, really neat. Yeah. Really nice guy, wealth of experience.
Yeah,
if you ever listened to him about suspension?
Holy smokes.
He's But that's the kind of thing you'd never. Very rare to get that anywhere else. So obviously be courteous. Don't be a rude person about it. They're going to have rough days sometimes. They're in the middle. I remember.
Yeah, you got to respect that. So
there was this is going years ago. I think in like 2006, 2008, when they were still running Vipers in the ALMS series. One of the guys binned a Viper. And I'll admit, we were a few drinks in and camping at Mosport, and a buddy and I ventured in. We're like, hey, there's lights on. We snuck into the pits. There's some lights on in the Viper pit. We're like, oh, let's go see what's going on. And so we pop in there, and they were fixing the car, and we just kept them company. Like we tried not to like bug them too much, but they were very welcoming. We just hung out in the pits and like, hey, just kind of watching and chilling and shooting the shit, honestly, which was a good memory. I almost forgot about that one. That was a while ago. You're right. Everyone comes from the GTA, but that's our most central population, right? And then you have states where there's a GTA in every state, right? And then they can come in on another one. So that's kind of neat. But so on the other end of things, I was at Cayuga, a second time instructing with Pinnacle Driving Academy, which is a new experience for me. I am a new and not really professional instructor, but lending my experience of what I do have, which is fun. It's a very entry-level course, and I'm enjoying it. It's been interesting to see different personalities in different cars, and I'm going to reiterate here for everyone: it is better to start in a slower car. That can be said for anyone, because your level at which you're moving and how your brain has to think and everything in a faster car. There's a lot more to learn, and it's a lot harder to learn.
You wouldn't believe the amount of people that come to me like, okay, I want to go to the track. Can I get a tune, a downpipe? And I'm like, no. Like, take your car stock with good tires. Let's do a brake flush. Make sure you got good brake pads. Stock tune. And then, why? I'm like, well, do you want to be in limp mode after like an hour of driving? Like, why would I get in limp mode? I'm like, listen, you do a pull getting on the highway for 3 seconds, there you go.
It's a lot different when you're
on the track. You're doing a pull like 80% of the lap, and try and do that for 6 hours straight. The car's not going to handle it.
Not only on that level of things. So I had a really good student. And I'll say this: one of my first student was awesome, really receptive, 340i, automatic, but tuned. First question I asked him, when was the last time you did your brake fluid? Oh, I don't know. Guess what was the first problem that we had? Hot brakes. Right? Because the kid was good and he started getting into it, and unfortunately the brakes started to fade.
And the car's 3,600 pounds.
Exactly. It's nothing to do with necessarily the driver, especially and then add to the new modern systems of very active brakes and traction control and whatnot, and your brakes get hot. So anyway, so not going to dwell on that. The main thing I want to tell you about is that is the first time I've taken Peaches, my new Corvette, out. I've been waiting. It's not street legal, so I can't go and just drive it, which has been extremely difficult. I've been antsy. I bought this thing 3 months ago. Yeah. So,
how'd that go?
Oh.
Was it fast?
Oh, it's fast. Ironically, it feels a lot like the Z, actually, in terms of balance.
Were you blowing your ear out, driving beside the wall there?
No, but it was really, really fun. It sounds so good. It sounds so good. Anyway, the sound is amazing, okay? But at this point, the whole goal is I want to be in a higher level. And the car is so easy. When we were talking on the phone when I made the decision, I don't know if we talked about it in the Corvette video, but Randy was recollecting a story where he drove a C5 for the first time, and he's like, Dave, you know, the rear end came out on me at like 10 degrees, and I was holding it. It was just so easy and perfect. And I swear to God, he's not kidding. Yeah. I had another buddy, and I know you're watching this. He was telling me, he's like, oh, Dave, it snaps. It snaps when you get, because he's been driving for forever, dirt biker, you know, good driver in my books. And he's like, oh yeah, the rear end likes to snap. I'm like, nope, the Z4 snaps more than the Corvette. So I'm happy to say that.
Cool.
That because I've spun the Z a few times now. Yeah. And the Corvette at the limit.
Maybe you need more downforce on the Z4.
Yeah. I need bigger wings. No.
Which Wang is bigger?
All the big Wangs.
Peaches or Z4?
They have the same, no, the C5 is slightly wider, but they have the same wing, ironically. Okay. I had the laptop out. I was doing some collection of data, so...
Did you have danger in a manifold?
I did, and then a piece of my floor gave way.
Oh, shit.
No. Fast and Furious reference.
Yeah.
No, so check that. I'm still kind of reviewing some of that stuff. But the main problem I had in learning experience was I knew it didn't have ABS. I expected it didn't have ABS. Yeah. I've driven cars without ABS, but I did not expect the brakes to be as strong as they were. And I'm not 100% sure that the bias is correct, because I think I only locked up the rears, but I definitely locked up, and twice. Once on the main straight at about 160, some poo came out. It was okay, but it wasn't a nice feeling to lock up the brakes. And then again on the second straightaway, same thing. And then I kind of figured out where that limit was in terms of easing in. So it's got a lot more brake than the Z4, but the pedal modulation, I wasn't able to get as quickly into it as I was with the Z. When I checked back some of my data in terms of going into turns and speeds compared with what data I was using, the Track Addict app, which I want to get back to using. I have a Garmin Catalyst. I want to get back to using that. So anyway, comparing the Z, I was able to brake later and deeper, just because obviously more confident with those brakes and with the ABS. Yeah. The LS is a monster, absolute monster. Love it. I was just kind of practicing on getting used to the car, so I didn't get down into second gear, which I could have. I was basically using third gear to pull out of everything, and just miles and miles.
Did you actually shift to fourth, or you just kept?
No, I got it in fourth. Yeah. The Z I can push about. I was pushing about 180 on the end of the front straightaway, and the Corvette was 195, 190 somewhere.
Yeah,
so there's already
and braking earlier.
And braking earlier. So it's obviously got a lot more pace in terms of outright speed, and it just, if I'm going to summarize, it just feels like a fatter Z. Like it honestly feels like my car fatter, and the way I can explain this scientifically, and I might be wrong, but this is how my ass feels it. The Z is technically 51 or 52% weight distribution. So it's pretty much, the engine's pretty far back and you're sitting pretty far back. So it's almost 50-50 in the Z. The difference with the Corvette is that the actual transmission is in the back. So you've got a fairly light motor out front and then a transmission in the back. I don't know what it is, but again, it's very close to 50-50. So they actually have very similar weight distribution and a similar footprint length and width wise, just bigger in the C5, more rubber and all the rest of it. So they're very similar that way, and they drive similarly. I was actually able to get pretty aggressive pretty quick, which was fun. I can't wait to learn more. Now, the bad part, which is the learning experience. As you know, I don't know a lot about this car, thanks to how I bought it and all the rest of it. I had a moment on the track amidst the smoke of locking the brakes. Smoke was coming through the transmission tunnel, up through the shifter. And I'm like, for a second, I'm like, oh my God, the transmission, something's wrong with the transmission. Yeah. And I'm like, but that's impossible because the transmission's out back. So I'm like, what's this smoke coming up through the cabin? And I'm like, okay, great. Am I going to catch fire today? I have a fire extinguisher in the car. That's right. I put it in already. I got off track, and what was happening was the catch can was spitting oil out of the breather onto the exhaust. Okay. And it's funny, I'm in the pits, and there's a guy in the next pit who was drag racing that day, and he's like looking, he's like, oh man, we know, talking about the car, and he's like, oh, in dirt track days, we used to just throw a sock over it. Do you have a sock and a zip tie? I didn't have a sock, I had a rag. So I tried that. Yep. And then all of a sudden, now the breather, which is further in front of the car, was spitting out more oil.
Oh, so the other breather.
The other breather. So that first one was a catch can, second one's a breather. Yeah. And that one was just coated. I'll put a picture up. The front end had a
Was the tank full? The catch tank?
The second one I have to empty. I believe it's full. Yeah. It wasn't after the first run. It is now after 3 different sessions. And the front one I drained, and it wasn't that much. I'd say maybe 2 ounces worth were in it. Yeah. And it wasn't all oil. It was a bit of I want to say maybe gas or water as well, right? So I got to figure it out. There could be multiple things here. It could be a cracked piston. It could be too much crankcase pressure. Anyway, so compression test, leak down test are in my future. And it could just be that system is not good anymore because it's been on the car for forever. So we'll see. The other thing too is the dipstick might not be right, so there might be too much oil in it. There's a lot of things I still got to find out. So that's where I'm at with Peaches right now.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, at least you're safe.
Yeah, safe.
And you learned. You had fun. It's a learning experience, right? You're taking on someone else's project, so.
That's the thing. Actually, the missus and I were talking about that because it literally has become now another project. That wasn't my intention, but let's be honest, that's where it's going to go. But it's a running project. That was the main thing of this. So.
And how did you get the car on the trailer? Because I know you're having lots of issues with that.
So the end of that is that I'll summarize by saying the trailer. I don't know if I said this in the last episode when we were talking about it, but the beaver tail was too steep, so it was bottoming out the car. And thanks to 11Tenths, I managed to borrow a trailer and get it to the track. So
what happened to your trailer?
I sold it.
Oh.
Well, no, and it wasn't. Yeah, no, it wasn't working, obviously. So I sold it.
So this will be a segue into another episode down the road where we're going to be talking about race car trailers.
Yeah, at some point this week, in a couple days, my new trailer should be starting its build. And we've been through a lot of different trailering, so stay tuned for the next episode where we talk about trailers.
Trailers.
Awesome. Thanks for watching, guys.
Thank you. Take care.